Hi, this is Matt with Computech, and thanks for your interest or purchase of the Computech DataMaxx Junior Dragster system. In this video tutorial, we are going to go through everything from unboxing to installing to firing up to downloading your data on the new DataMaxx Junior Dragster system. If you want, you can watch the full video and check each of the chapters, or there are also individual videos for each steps if you want to reference them later. If you have any questions or problems, feel free to reach out to us anytime at Computech.com. Hi, I'm Matt with Computech, and today we're going to be unboxing, installing, and testing the new DataMaxx Junior Dash on my son Rowan the Robot's Junior Dragster. So without further ado, let's get to unboxing. So when you go on our website, you'll find that there's a couple different options you can choose from with the Dash. The first is the actual Dash mounting style. This is our standard mount. It's got two tabs on either side with 4 bolts holding it down. This is going to be a mount to any flat surface. This is the most universal mount and the least intensive as far as install goes. We also offer a flush mount dash that allows you to flush mount this back half of the dash into the panel itself, and then we use an autometer style compression to hold the dash in place. Next, we have our DataMaxx main module. This is kind of the bread and butter of everything. This is the data logger. As you can see, we have opted for the pre-wiring with this. The pre-wiring is another one of those options, and it just means that we have already terminated all the wires inside of here for you. So there's a lot less that you have to do. As you can see, we've got an SD card slot right here, as well as 2 diagnostic lights. We do want to make sure that when we install this, that the SD card slot is hanging over the edge of the plate so that we can easily reach underneath the body and pop that SD card out. Now, if you didn't opt for the pre-wiring, you will have to wire this yourself, and it will come with individual bundles basically. So as you can see here, this black bundle is our sensor harness. We've got our exhaust and our head temperature. We've got our jack shaft RPM, and then we've got the inductive pickup for a magneto or PVL coil. Here we have the Deutsch connector that will go to the dash itself and connect to the screen. Then we have our power and record switch. This will allow you to turn the unit on and turn the recording on. And then finally we have a power and a ground to go to our 12-volt battery. If you are running a 16 or 18 volt battery, you will need a voltage drop down, so you'll have to reach out to us to get one of those. So that is the main module. One of those options is going to be that pre-wiring. Highly recommend it. Makes your life a lot easier. Also, if you let us know what size t-shirt you wear, we will hook you up with a t-shirt, and we have Junior Dragster driver shirts as well if you want to let us know what your kid size is. Then we have a head temp sensor and an EGT sensor. Now these are optional, and the reason they are optional is because a lot of you've already got a data logger on the car and you're switching from the Micron. So if you don't want to spend the money to replace the sensors you've already got, there you go. So that is an option. Next we have the accessory pack. This is going to give you 2 SD cards, one of our nice screwdrivers that is a flathead and small enough to make the terminations inside of here nice and easy. And then we have our jack shaft 4 magnet collar. Now this collar is kind of nice because it has a built-in keyway, and if something happens to that, we have a recessed keyway. So it's got 2 different ways of being able to mount inside of there. And next we have the battery tray itself. So one of the options is the battery tray. Now we need to have some way of mounting this main module and a 12-volt battery in front of the foot box. So if you don't already have a plate there or a weight tank there that you can mount to, then we do offer this universal battery tray. It's pretty simple. Comes with 2 bolts to hold down the battery mounts. So these will go on the sides here. Comes with 2 bolts to hold the actual tray down, and then this is the battery tie down right there. So we've got a section for the battery right here. We've got a section for the main module. So this guy's going to set right there like that. And then if you want, you can also opt for the 12-volt battery. So we've tried a couple different 12-volt batteries. We have found that the lithium batteries are far superior. The cost difference is a little bit more for the lithium, but they'll last you forever. An AGM battery, if it drains all the way down, it's pretty much garbage. Whereas if this drains down all the way like our cell phones, they can be charged right back up. So highly recommend the lithium battery. Keep in mind that a lithium battery does require a lithium charger, which means that you can't use a normal charger with it. However, a lot of our starters have got that lightweight lithium battery, so if you've got that one, you already have a lithium charger, so you can kind of double up. And as you can see, that fits nicely inside the 2 grooves right here. The battery tie down will go right over top of it, and now we're secure this way and we are secure this way, so the battery is extremely secure in here. Next we have our DataMaxx instruction manual, and that's going to be a very comprehensive manual, cover everything that we're talking about here today. And then you've got some contingency decals, and we do pay contingency for PDRA and a couple of NHRA races as well. So this is the unboxing of the DataMaxx Junior Dash Kit. We'll go over the options real quick. We have the screen mounting style. We have either the standard mount that you see here or the flush mount. We have the pre-wiring option, whether you want the wires already assembled for you. We have the option for the head temp and EGT temperature sensor. We have the option for the universal battery tray. And then we have the option to use the same battery that you see here that we've had good success with. So that is the DataMaxx Junior Kit. Next up on our list is going to be installing this plate itself, getting an idea of where everything's going to go. But first, in order to do that, we got to get the body off. All right, so now that we have got everything figured out where we want to install it, it's time to actually get to work. So here is our universal battery tray. As you can see, here's our spot for the battery, here's our spot for the main module, and we've got plenty of real estate over here for these 2 mounting tabs. So essentially what we want to do is, first we want to put our battery in here to make sure that we've got clearance. Keep in mind, as a battery, do not short these 2 tabs out, you get sparks. So obviously with this setup, we've got plenty of clearance. I've got plenty of gap between the steering column there. I've got plenty of room around the sides. So installing the battery in that location is not going to be a problem. The next thing we want to make sure of is when you get the battery tray, you get basically a bolt here. One side has been Loctited, so that's going to be hard to remove. The other side is going to be loose and easy to remove, however we do use a lock nut. But we want to make sure that when this is in here, you've got enough room to get a wrench down underneath of this area. So we want to make this tab and get this thing centered. Get it right where I need to. Yourself a Sharpie, and just come up from the bottom side. And now I clearly know where I need to put my mounting bolts. All right, so now that I've got my holes right here, we're gonna go ahead and mount up the battery tray. Okay, so now that the battery tray is installed and it's nice and secure, keep in mind we've got these forks that are coming up this way, so it's getting a lot of its battery support right there. So let's go ahead and put the battery in. Keep in mind, battery terminals, do not short it. That is going to be the theme of this section of the video. Don't short your battery terminals. So again, one side is Loctited. We're going to stick that side up from the bottom. All right, we do not over tighten this battery. We want it secure, but we do not want to damage the battery. So the next step is going to be installing the main module itself and not worrying about the wires. So we're gonna install this main module and we're just gonna let the wires dangle for the moment. Okay, so the next step is to install the main module itself, which if you have opted for the universal battery tray and the pre-wiring is pretty darn simple. So basically we've got 4 bolts in here and we've got 4 bolt holes already drilled in here. The only caveat is that the SD card slot does have to go towards the outside. It cannot go towards the inside. We need to be able to reach our hand up underneath this body and pop that SD card slot out. So let's get bolting. And we are only going to, we're not going to worry about these wires. We're going to just simply let them dangle. There is a retaining bar that's holding them on there, so it should not be hurting anything. And if you want, once you get kind of positioned in here, you can kind of let it dangle on, so you're not putting too much stress on the wires. So now that the main module is installed, it's nice and secure, the battery's secure. This tray is not going anywhere. It is solid. We can also come up and easily reach under here and find that SD card slot and pop that SD card slot out. So now the next step is going to be to install the Junior Dash. So now that we've already got the main module installed, it's time to install the screen itself. So the reason we're doing the screen now instead of running the wires for the main module is that way we can have this installed and then zip tie all the wires at one time. Makes life a little easier. So the first thing I've done is I've removed the hardware already, set that aside. We use a kill switch on the steering wheel here, so we're gonna go ahead and take this off because I want to be able to get it nice and close to the steering column. You don't want it touching the steering column because what happens is these steering columns can bounce and vibrate. So we want to make sure that we've got some gap off of that steering column. So what we're going to do is go ahead and get this into a position where we think it should be. Make sure we've got room behind where we plan on screwing everything. And just getting a general idea as to where we want it to go. Now, because I've got a half scale, I've got this, I actually have a custom one because this is from a previous dash. So I'm basically just going to line this up and get it right where I want to now. So what I like to do is drill one hole, mount that bolt, drill the other hole, mount that bolt, and then do it one by one when it comes to something like this. Getting the holes just right is going to be important. I'm definitely going to take my time when it comes to getting this thing centered where I feel like it should be. And that looks to be right where I want it to lay. And I just moved it. So we'll try this again. All right, so now I got one hole, or one spot for a hole. I'm gonna go ahead and drill that one out. All right, so now I got that hole drilled. And go ahead and slide that in there. Appears to fit just fine. Now for this hole, I'm going to mark the opposite hole, which is going to be the bottom right corner. Okay. So now that our holes are drilled here, we can go ahead and install the dash. And again, with these vibration mounts, we are using lock nuts, so we don't need to get them over tight. We do not want to over tighten. We want the vibration mounts to still be able to do what they're meant to do. Now, she's secure. She is not going anywhere. So now that we've got the battery tray installed, the main module installed, and the Junior Dash installed, we're ready to start running the wires. We've got 3 wire bundles that are included with the kit. One is the sensor wire harness, another is the record switch, and another is the dash connection. So it's very important, do not zip tie anything yet. We want to run the sensor from the front to the back, and then we want to get the sensors installed on here. After we do that, we're going to run the record switch from the front to the back. And we're going to get the record switch installed. And then we will run the dash cable from the front to the back. Once we are done, we are going to zip tie everything from the back to the front. That way all of our excess cable is up here in the front that's going to be completely hidden by the body. So let's start running wires. So now that we've got the wire for the sensor harness run, let's install all of the little sensor harness pieces. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the sensor harness, this bundle, this circuit board here, we're going to get this zip tied into a position so that we can set the length for the rest of it. So at the end of the sensor harness where the wires come out, there's a hard circuit board here. We want to zip tie this directly underneath the jack shaft, and if possible underneath the motor mount or underneath of a roll cage bar. That way we can help prevent the ignition noise from the coil from hitting it. So the first thing we're going to do is the jack shaft sensor. So as you can see, there's two split nuts there. We're going to take one of those off. I have already installed the jack shaft collar on here, so I'm not going to go through the process of taking my shaft off because it's already on here. But clearly ours is not using a split collar, so you do have to slide the shaft out, slide this in, space everything appropriately, space it so that the center of your collar is at the center of your tab for your jack shaft sensor. And then we are going to grab an 1/8 inch drill bit. I'll slide it through. I'm going to tighten it from this end. All right, so it's getting close. So I'm going to take the bit, the non-threaded, non-cutting side, and then I'm going to loosen this up and let it get to the point where we're at exactly 1/8 of an inch. So now that I've got my gap correct, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that the alignment is correct. A lot of these tabs have got some adjustment here, so I'm going to get this as lined as on top as I can, and then 1/2 inch wrench, get it the rest of the way. Now this is a plastic threaded sensor, so do not over tighten this. Very gently, that thing is not going anywhere. Now that our drive shaft sensor is in place, and as you can see, we've got plenty of room to be able to move this motor plate forward or back. That's what we want to see. We want to get this in a position where it's got room for you to move things without having to take the sensor off, because that's just a pain. So next, because we've got plenty of room on this guy, we're going to do these next. Now we have these staggered so that if the labels end up rubbing off, if you stagger this end, it ends up working out just perfectly. I've already got them somewhat staggered here, so I know that the head temp is the further away one. So I can go ahead and plug that in. And then the exhaust right here. Okay, so now we are ready to install and get the alignment right for the inductive pickup for the engine RPM. So what we have here is the clip that came with it. We've cut our wire so that it is just beyond, but room for the engine to move forward and back. So we want to now get this installed correctly. A lot of times the micron would wrap around. I don't like to do that. I find we get a better signal by having this up off the spark plug a little bit and allowing it to pick up this inductive charge that's running through it. So the first thing we're going to do is grab our 2 wire ties, and we're going to go ahead and install this guy here. And we're not going to zip tie it too tight. We are just going to kind of keep it loose for the moment. Now what I want to do is, because this does have a clip for the spark plug, I can install this part loose here, which makes life a little easier. So I'll get this position so it's just right at the end of the clip. And I'm going to go ahead and tighten down on the zip tie. And now I can go ahead and clip this on to the spark plug wire. And when I clip this on, I want to clip it on a couple inches away from the actual spark plug. I want to be kind of in between the spark plug and the coil itself. So somewhere in this middle area, and you can kind of fine tune it a little bit by moving it around. But in general, we want to try to be avoiding the noise that's coming from the coil. So having an evac tank helps get a cleaner signal because it just blocks that ignition noise. And then by having the signal run up from this side, we allow the engine to block some of that ignition noise as well. So you end up with a much cleaner signal that way. Okay, so now that we have the sensor harness ran, again, it's not wire tied, it's loose, we want it loose. Now we're going to run the power and record switch bundle. right here. Again, this is where you may need to take that seat off temporarily. Tighten down. Typically a good pair of needle nose pliers with this type. Good. So now up is going to be on, middle is going to be off, and down is going to be record. And so basically, when we just want to sit here and check the dash out, we'll have the switch on up. And when we want to switch it to record, we just blow right past the center section and go all the way down. So just right down like that, and now we're recording. And when we want to turn it off, we just go back to the middle section. Okay, so now that we've got our sensor harness ran and installed, we've got our power and record switch wire running and installed, now it's time to run the dash wire. So we'll run this in the same manner as everything else. And this is a much shorter run, as it's just going to connect right here. Now that we've got all 3 of the wires ran, we can go ahead and zip tie from the back to the front. Not from the front to the back, from the back to the front. So we're going to start with the sensor harness in the back. We'll get that to the point where the record switch will join in. Then we'll join the record switch, and the sensor harness will go all the way to the point where the dash cable joins in, and then we will join them all back to this point right here. Now, one of the wiring things that I like to do is use a wire tie guide. So I cut a piece of wire, nice bright colored. For juniors, I like to use 4 inches. For big cars, I like to use 6 inches. And the idea is we're going to put a zip tie every 4 inches apart from each other. And it's not necessary, but it does make the wiring look really clean. Okay, so now we've got all the other wires installed. We need to get our power wires installed as well and get them hooked up so that it's nice and clean. So what we're going to do is, just for the sake of making the installation look clean, I'm going to run these power wires with at least one of these wires here and bundle them together a little bit and try to make the installation look as clean as possible. And what we're going to do is, just so that the wires look good, we're going to go ahead and terminate this one first. And as always, we want to twist the wire before we crimp it. So now we're able to place that on. I'm also going to place on a battery tender connection. So both of these are going to go on at the same time. Make sure to twist. Get our shrink tube on. And then crimp our connector. All right, now let's get our last screw in for the battery, as well as our other piece here. All right, so now let's clean up our zip ties. And now all the wiring is complete. Okay, so the first time turning the system on, it can take upwards of 60 seconds for it to boot up. After the first time, or after it's been on recently, it should take about 10 seconds for it to go from powering on to showing you live gauges. Now we can see we've got our engine RPM, we've got our head temperature, we've got our battery voltage, we've got the record switch, and then we've got an independent record button. So the first thing we want to do is we want to edit the gauges for our particular application. So this car's got a 4,000 launch RPM setup. We've got from 4,000 to 3,600, so a 400 below and a 400 above. Well, this car runs Pro Junior Dragster. We want to launch right around 4,400 RPM. So what we're going to do is we're going to swipe down, click on Settings, and then click on the lock icon. That's going to unlock the gauges and allow us to edit. So now when I swipe back, I can see now I've got a different color background. So if I click and hold on this, I can hit Edit Gauge. Now you can see the target area right here and the gauge range right there. So what I'm going to do is change the gauge range to 4,000, so I'm 4,400 below. And now we're going to make this 4,800. And our target is now going to be 4,400. All right, I'm going to hit save. The same thing goes for head temp. So if I want to change the head temp, I just click and hold it, hit edit gauge, and then here I can change the target range, how much plus or minus I've got there, and then the gauge range from the min and the max. This is where I like it to run, so I'm going to leave it alone there. So what I'm going to do is go to settings, hit the lock icon. So now when I swipe back, I've got 4,400, and my head temp is now at the right ideal range. So now we are ready to fire this thing up and make sure that the head temperature is reading, the engine RPM is reading, and everything is doing what it's supposed to. All right, now that we've got the entire system installed, we got the car outside, we're ready to fire it up. First thing we'll do is put the SD card in the main module. We're going to go ahead and turn it on, and this time, because we want to do a recording, we can just flip the switch straight down. And now it should take about 10 seconds for the gauges to turn on. And now you can also see that the record switch is green, which indicates that we are recording. So we are ready to go ahead and fire this thing up. And we've got success. Now we can turn it off and go download our log file. Okay, now that we've done our test recording and we've got our SD card, we're ready to go ahead and download. But first, if you don't have the DataMaxx software, we do have to download that by going to our website, Computech.com, going to tech support, DataMaxx, and downloading the software. Now, once the software is installed, you will be in a SD card setup wizard window, which we'll show you here. It's going to ask for the SD card after you've recorded a log file. So we're going to go ahead and place the SD card in. Hit next. It's going to say search finished. Hit finish. All right, so now it knows the location of the SD card. So next we need to download this run. So we're going to hit the SD button here. And this is your way to copy down log files from your computer. So we keep things organized in folders. So what we want to do is we want to create a new event for each folder, new folder for each event. So what we want to do is come here, erase the words, type new event name here, and type in test setup, and then hit copy here. Successfully copy one log file. And here you can see our engine RPM line. Here's where we fired it up, here's where we turned it off a couple times, and slowly brought the engine RPMs up. So everything is good to go. We want to double check our head temp and EGT temperature, make sure they're good as well. And now you're ready to go racing. There's also a lot of video tutorials on how to utilize the software better, so be sure to check those out as well.